Okay, now we talk about brainstem. Okay, brainstem. Okay, actually, this brainstem actually, right? Generally, we can say that this is something like bridge, right? Bridge in between your brain, all right, which is your diencephalon, your cerebrum, and also your spinal cord. Okay, your brainstems actually, and also this brainstem we consider as a vital structures of the brain, vital, which is very very important. Brainstem we consider as a vital structure for the brain because of you, you should remember that a lot of this brainstem basically consists of a lot of vital center. Vital center means the center which is control vital organs. For example, within the brainstem you can see we have cardiovascular center, right? So brainstem control our cardiovascular system, and also within the brainstem also we have nuclei, okay, which is control our breathing pattern, okay, control our breathing pattern, and also this brainstem also uh, because as you know this brainstem basically considered part of the brain where a lot of cranial nerve, right? I think most of the cranial nerve basically derive from the brainstem, okay, because we have 12 pair of cranial nerve, we have 12 pair of cranial nerve, right? Number 1 until number 12, right? uh, Out of 12, right, 10 cranial nerve basically branch off from brainstem. Okay, that's why this brainstem is very very important. And also since this brainstem it becomes something like bridge in between your spinal cord and also towards your brain, or towards your cerebrum, towards your diencephalon, and also towards your cerebellum. So meaning that this brainstem basically consists of a lot of ascending tract and also descending tracts, right? Which is passing through up and down, okay, within the brainstem actually. That's why this brainstem is very very important, and you can see a lot of structure actually sitting inside the brainstem, right? So again, before we touch into detail this brainstem, right, again, right, I love to explain about I repeat many many times again regarding the embryological developments of the brain, am I right? Embryological developments of the brain, because of we want to see that this brainstem actually derived from which part of the neural tube. All right, as you know, your brains actually come everything coming from where class? It coming from neural tube. Okay, it coming from neural tube. Actually, this structure I already explained during our first lecture, right? Because this neural tube soon will develop into primary vesicle. Am I right, class? One, two, three. Three primary vesicles. Three primary vesicles. And extending downward, this is your spinal cord, right? So this is your primary vesicle, right? Your primary vesicles, right? And this primary vesicle consists of three swollen area, three vesicles. Number 1 we call alpha. Yes, class? Yes, class. I think I repeat many many times this development of the brain actually. First vesicles. Yes. Very good. This is P, right? Prosencephalon, right? Prosencephalon. Second vesicle known as a. Very good. Mesencephalon. And the last one is your. Very good. Rhombencephalon, right? Rhombencephalon. And also this prosencephalon basically akan further dividing into another vesicle, which is it developed into two vesicles, one very big vesicles, right? Which is considered part of your forebrain. And then you have these vesicles, right? So this prosencephalon developed into, actually you know, right? It developed into your telencephalon and also diencephalon. Am I right? Diencephalon. Okay. So telencephalon is which is soon it developed into cerebrum, which is diencephalon. Okay. As you know, diencephalon consists of thalamus, hypothalamus, and also epithalamus. And don't forget your subthalamus, right? So everything basically derived from prosencephalon, or we can say this is part of forebrain. Second, we have mesencephalon, right? So this is the mesencephalon, right? And this mesencephalon basically remain as a one vesicle, and this mesencephalon, okay, remain as a same vesicle actually, where this mesencephalon soon develop into your midbrain. Understand? Where the telencephalon soon develop into your cerebrum, right? And diencephalon, yes, it remains as a diencephalon, which is consists of thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, and also subthalamus, right? So this rhombocephalon, right? Now you know that this rhombocephalon, the most caudal part of the neural tube, okay, before reach the spinal cord. So this rhombocephalon developed into another two part over here, one vesicular over here and one vesicular over here. Then you can see this is the part of spinal cord. Okay, so this rhombocephalon developed into, yes, class, it developed into, yes, metencephalon and also myelencephalon. Metencephalon and also myelencephalon. And this metencephalon soon developed into pons and also cerebellum, right? Whereas the myelencephalon soon developed into your, yes, class, medulla. Very good, medulla oblongata, or simply we can call as a medulla only, right? So this is the derivative for each part of your brain, class, from your neural tube. So that's what you need to remember. That's why when we talk about brainstem, right? Your brainstem, actually this is derivative mesencephalon and also rhombencephalon. If I mentioned about the medulla oblongata basically derivative from the rhombencephalon. Pons and also cerebellum also derivative from the rhombencephalon, whereas the midbrain basically this is derivative from the mesencephalon. Okay, mesencephalon. Right. So this is introduction to the brainstem, class. Okay, next. Okay, that's why I told you before, class. Your midbrain, pons, and so also medulla oblongata, this is considered as brainstem. Midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata considered as a brainstem, right? And as I explained earlier, these three parts, your brainstem basically connect in between it's something like bridge. It acts as a bridge, connect your spinal cord and also with your diencephalon and also your telencephalon. Or you can say that this is something like bridge, connect in between spinal cord and also your forebrain. Forebrain basically refer to the prosencephalon, okay? Forebrain, okay? Right? Where the rhombencephalon basically we consider as a hindbrain, okay? Rhomben means hindbrain, okay? The most caudal of the brain structure, actually. Okay? So now you understood that, alright? Now you understood, right? So this is the lateral view, midbrain. This is your pons, and this is your medulla oblongata, and extend downward. This is spinal cord, class. Right. So just posterior to the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata, you can see this small brain and this small brain. Absolutely, you know, right? This is your cerebellum. And again, you need to remember that just above to the midbrain, because this is the midbrain, this is pons, and this is your medulla oblongata. Above your midbrain, absolutely, you can see this is your, yes, class, your thalamus, right? Your thalamus, right? Just posterior to the thalamus, you have epithalamus, yes, class. Can you identify this gland, class? Yes. Posterior to the thalamus. Very good. Okay. Posterior to thalamus. Okay, we call it as a pineal gland, right? We call it as a pineal gland, and just anterior, inferior to thalamus over here, right? You have piece of gray matter sitting over here, class, and this gray matter we call as a, yes, class, anterior, inferior to your thalamus. This piece of gray matter we call as a, yes, class, yes.
Third ventricle.
Anterior, inferior to the thalamus. Yeah. Piece of gray matter. Piece of gray matter. This gray matter we call as a, yes, class?
Hypothalamus.
Hypothalamus. Ayo. Hypothalamus, actually. Now I'm very, very sad, actually. Now I'm very, very unhappy. We already have a lecture regarding the hypothalamus in detail. And suddenly I ask you about what is the piece of gray matter sitting inferior to the thalamus, right? And you still confused. And this piece of gray matter should be very, very to answer, actually, right? Should be your hypothalamus, right? Something wrong here, actually. Just below to your hypothalamus, right? Anteriorly, you have this swollen area. Absolutely, you know the structure, right? This is your pituitary pituitary gland, right? So this pituitary gland, and posteriorly you have another swollen over here, class. Yes, class. This swollen known as a posterior hypothalamus, just inferior, right? You have another swollen over here, and this swollen we call as a, yes, class. This is pituitary, anterior, posterior. This swollen you call as a, yes, class.
Mammillary gland. Mammillary body.
Very good. Mammillary body. Okay, mammillary body, right? Because I already explained to you, your hypothalamus, you have several swollen area. Am I right? You have tuberosinium, you have anterior pituitary, you have posterior pituitary. At the most posterior, you have pair of mammillary body, because this mammillary body is very important during when we want to talk about the limbic system. Am I right? Okay? Because it has like something like connection to your thalamus, right? So now, by the way, focus to your brainstem current class. Focus to the brainstem. This is just external anatomy, and also what is the surrounding area, which is when we want to explain of the brainstem, what is the surrounding structure actually. Now you know, right? When we talk about the brainstem, above you can see your diencephalon, right? Above you can see your diencephalon. And now, from your brainstem, posterior to your brainstem actually, right? You know this structure, right? Which is this is your cerebellum. Okay, this is cerebellum, meaning that, right? Okay, meaning that every input from your spinal cord, from your brainstem, even from cerebrum, right? Every input, and that input, if this input moving towards or impulses, right, or any sensory sensation which enter your spinal cord, enter your cerebellum, okay, meaning that in between your cerebellum and also your medulla, in between your cerebellum and also pons, and also in between your cerebellum and also your midbrain, you must have bundle of axons. Okay, you must have tracts actually, bundle of axons or tracts actually, which is connect in between brainstem and also your cerebellum, right? So meaning that in between medulla oblongata, you have this bundle of axon. All right. Again, this is only schematic diagram. Don't worry. After this, we will touch into detail. Right? You have bundle of axon. In between your pons and also your cerebellum, again you have bundle of axon over here. You can call it as a tracts, all right? Okay, and also in between medulla, your midbrain and also your cerebellum, also you have this kind of bundle of axons, plus, right? Okay, so this bundle of axon connect in between brainstem and cerebellum. This is what we call as cerebellar peduncles. Cerebellar peduncles, right? So how many peduncles you have, class? 1, 2, and 3. Meaning that number 1, you have superior cerebellar peduncles. Number 2, you have middle cerebellar peduncles. Right? Middle cerebellar peduncles. And the third one is, class, in between your medulla oblongata and also your cerebellum, you have another bundle of axon or another cerebellar peduncles, which is this we call as yes, class, we call as inferior cerebellar peduncles. And again, what is cerebellar peduncles? Cerebellar peduncles basically refer to the bundle of axons which is connect in between brainstems anteriorly and also cerebellum posteriorly. This is what we call as cerebellar peduncles, right? Meaning that in between midbrain and also cerebellum, we have superior cerebellar peduncle. In between pons and cerebellum, we have middle cerebellar peduncle. And also the last one, the most inferior, in between medulla oblongata and also your cerebellum, we have inferior cerebellar peduncles, class, right? Soalan setakat ni, kelas. Clear, kelas? Clear, kelas? Everything? Clear, class?
Clear, clear.
Okay, very good. Right, please bear in your mind, class. The biggest peduncles, the biggest tract, the biggest bundle of axons connect in between brainstem and also cerebellum. These cerebellar peduncles will be your middle cerebellar peduncles. Right, the biggest one. Middle cerebellar peduncles, meaning that most of the input from your brain, from your spinal cord, and also from your brainstem. Actually, most of this input entering your cerebellum through middle cerebellar peduncle. Don't worry, after this we'll touch into detail after this class. Right. Now, this is a lateral view class. This is lateral view, right? Okay, if I draw this brainstem from the anterior view, right? Not from anterior view. Again, okay, start from your midbrain, right? So this is your midbrain, superior view of the midbrain class. Alright. Alright. Inferiorly over here, actually you have pons, right? Over here. This is the exactly structures of the pons when you are viewed from the anterior, right? And the last one, you have this structure, which is actually this is your medulla oblongata, right? So this is your medulla oblongata. Okay, and then this medulla oblongata continue inferiorly to form your spinal cord. So this is your cervical segment of the spinal cord. Okay, now listen carefully. So this is the anterior view external anatomy of the brainstem. Actually, the most posterior, the most superior, the most rostral part, which is this is your midbrain. Okay, this is your midbrain. Middle part, this is your pons, and inferior part, this is your medulla oblongata. Okay, now listen carefully. Just posterior to your brainstem, because this is anterior view, right? So now you can imagine class posteriorly, you have this structure, alright? And this structure basically refer to your cerebellum, right? So the green structure over here that I draw for you, this is your cerebellum. Right. So this is midbrain, this is your pons, and this is medulla oblongata. So now refer to the pons structure, class. Refer to the pons structure. When we view this pons from the anterior view, right? So this pons laterally will develop into the bundle of axon, very thick, very prominent, big bundle of axon sitting laterally, right, and entering your cerebellum. Okay. So this structure, this part of the cerebellum, this part of the pons, this is what we call as a middle cerebellar peduncles. Okay, middle cerebellar peduncle. Meaning that how many middle cerebellar peduncle you have? You have left and right. Okay, pair of middle cerebellar peduncles, left and right. Okay, and then connect into your cerebellum. Okay, posterolaterally. And also, just above to your middle cerebellar peduncle, which is coming from your midbrain, you have another peduncles over here, class, right? And this peduncle basically is located just posterior to your middle cerebellar peduncles, and these peduncles we call as a, yes, class, we call as a
Superior.
Very good.
Superior.
Okay. Don't get confused. This is cerebellar, not cerebral, right? Because it's entering your cerebellum, so that we call as a superior cerebellar, right? Cerebellar refer to the cerebellum, right? Peduncles. Superior cerebellar peduncle. Same thing, right? Bilateral, left and right. And this peduncle basically sitting posterior to the middle cerebellar peduncle, because this middle cerebellar is so big. That's why this superior cerebellar peduncles is sitting inferiorly, something like overlap, right? Middle cerebellar peduncles more anterior, whereas the superior cerebellar peduncles more posterior. Okay, so this is your superior cerebellar peduncles connect your midbrain towards your cerebellum, and the last one, class, you have another peduncle, so class. and the peduncles, and these peduncles we call as a, yes class, we call as a, very good, inferior cerebellar peduncles. Okay, inferior cerebellar peduncles, which is connect your medulla oblongata with cerebellum. Right, so these peduncles I will explain in detail when we talk about cerebellum soon. Okay, because each peduncle consists of different tracts. All right, and that tract, maybe it can be afferent, which is sensory tract, carry sensation entering your cerebellum, and also it can consider as an efferent fiber, which is motor tract or motor fiber, which is carry impulse, carry motor input from cerebellum and back to your brainstem, and maybe go to your spinal cord or maybe go to your cerebrum class, right? So we'll talk into detail when we talk about the cerebellum topics, right? But from now on, you understood the cerebellar peduncles is a bundle of axons connect your brainstem and also your cerebellum, okay, posteriorly. Okay, next class. Next, focus on your, no, before that class, there's one structure is very, very important that you should know, class. Okay, again, I draw from lateral view, class. I draw lateral view. Okay, superiorly, you have brainstem, your midbrain over here. Okay, and then you have pons, and also you have medulla oblongata and spinal cord, right, inferiorly. All right. Okay, and posterior to your brainstem, you have cerebellum, right, class? You have cerebellum, class. Right, within your brainstem, actually, class, within your brainstem, okay, absolutely, class. You know the structure. Absolutely, you know the structure because this is what we call as your thalamus, right? Above your thalamus, you have thalamus, and in between this thalami, right, class? In between this thalami, you have this cavity. Am I right, class? You have this cavity which is filled by cerebrospinal fluid, and this cavity known as a, yes, class. This cavity known as a, in between two thalami, just above your midbrain. This cavity known as a, pardon? Above your midbrain, in between two thalami, you have cavity. Alright? This is cavity which is very good, third ventricle, right? So this is the third ventricle actually, because of when we trace from the third ventricles, right? You have in just below to the third ventricles, you have tunnel, am I right? You have something like channel, which is this channel basically sitting inside your midbrain, and this channel known as a, yes, class, where this channel basically carries CSF from the third ventricles go to the fourth ventricles, and this channel, this tunnel, okay, known as a, yes, class. So this is your third ventricles. So just below to the third ventricle, you have channel, am I right? You have tunnel, and this tunnel known as a, yes, class. Come on, your ventricular system. Central canal, are you sure? Basically, central canal sitting here, actually. Central canal basically sitting inside your spinal cord. I'm asking you, this canal, this tunnel, this channel below your third ventricle, and it's sitting just inferior, so it's sitting within the midbrain. That channel we call as a, yes,
cerebral aqueduct.
very good, right? We call as a cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius, right? Okay, or you can see as an aqueduct of midbrain, right? So now from the cerebral aqueduct, that's why when we cut your midbrain, after this we study about the transverse sections of the midbrain, right? Okay, and just posterior, okay, at the level or area we call as a tectum area, right? we have a channel which is absolutely, you can see this cerebral aqueduct, right, posterior to the midbrain, right? So when you cut every part of the midbrain, you can see this cerebral aqueduct posteriorly. Right? Now, from cerebral aqueduct, you can see another cavity, which is this cavity is almost similar to the tan shape, right? Tan shape, right? Bentuk kemah, tan shape. Ni, tan. Masih bentuk tan. Right? Tan shape. Okay? Which is ini adalah dia punya roof, right? Tan, kemah. Tan, and ini adalah dia punya floor, right? Roof and floor. Okay? So this tan shaped cavity, right? Tan shaped cavity, basically dia punya roof dia akan expand towards your cerebellum. Okay? Towards your cerebellum until reach your mid medulla. Okay? Until reach your mid medulla. And the floor straight away form your posterior wall for your pons, and also posterior wall for your medulla, upper half of the medulla, and extend downward as a central canal. Now listen carefully, class. Listen carefully. This diagram. Alright. Now, okay. So what you can see here, class, right? This cerebral aqueduct continue inferiorly, enter your pons and also upper half, because not every part of your medulla oblongata you have this cavity, only upper half. This is the whole thing is your medulla, right? So about upper half of the medulla oblongata, you can see this cavity. This cavity, right, you should remember, this is your fourth ventricles, am I right? This fourth ventricles actually begin from the upper border of the pons until reach your upper half of the medulla oblongata, right? Meaning that when we cut your medulla oblongata, when we cut just the most inferior medulla oblongata, right, you cannot see this third ventricle. This fourth ventricle. You only can see this fourth ventricles, okay, dekat mana? Upper half of the medulla oblongata. But pons, yes, every part of the medulla oblongata of the pons, you can see this cavity. This cavity we call as a fourth ventricle. Please remember, class, right? This cavity, your fourth ventricle, right, which is towards your cerebellum, this is what we call as a roof for the fourth ventricle. This is roof, and this roof basically facing your cerebellum. Clear, class? Facing your cerebellum. Roof for your fourth ventricles. Okay. Whereas the floor fourth ventricle, right? The floor for the fourth ventricle basically facing, yes, class, facing your pons, and also facing your upper half of the medulla. And from fourth ventricles, you know, right, it moving downward as a canal, which is lower half of the medulla, and also within your spinal cord, and this is what we call as a, yes, class, we call as a central canal, right? Central canal. So this is your fourth ventricles, right? Now you should know that, class, right? These pons, ini adalah anterior view, okay? Anterior view, you punya pons and also upper half of the medulla. Meaning that bila you bercakap mengenai posterior surface, pons and also upper half of the medulla, we should understand that posterior pons and also upper half of the medulla oblongata basically formed by floor, ini class, formed by floor of the fourth ventricles. Okay, formed by floor of the fourth ventricle, right? I think I can make you simple diagram, class, right? Okay, ini adalah floor fourth ventricles, dan ini merupakan roof fourth ventricles, right? So apa yang nampak sekarang ni adalah dekat sini you can see this your pons, and dekat sini you can see this is your medulla oblongata. Alright, this is your pons and this is your medulla oblongata. Ini adalah bahagian anterior dia, right? Ini adalah bahagian posterior, class. Okay, dan ini adalah you punya fourth ventricles. Dan you should know that this region kita panggil sebagai, yes class, ini kita panggil sebagai floor of fourth ventricles. Floor of the fourth ventricles. Okay, so kalau saya buang this floor fourth ventricles, meaning that this pons pada bahagian posterior akan terbuka. Understood? And medulla oblongata also, if I cut this floor for the fourth ventricle, meaning that this medulla oblongata pada bahagian posterior akan terbuka. Okay, akan open actually, right? Okay, tetapi this posterior part, surface for the pons and also posterior surface for the upper medulla, basically it closed by this fourth ventricle. Which part of the fourth ventricle? Specifically kita panggil sebagai floor for the fourth ventricle class, right? So this is posterior surface for the pons and also upper half of the medulla, right? Meaning that kalau you nak tengok pada bahagian posterior, you nak tengok this region, you nak tengok kat this region and you nak observe this regions, right? Okay, apa you kena buat? Number one, you need to remove the cerebellum. Number two, you need to remove this roof for the fourth ventricles. Then baru you nampak floor for the fourth ventricle where it form your pons, posterior surface, and also posterior surface of the pons, and also posterior surface of the upper half of the medulla class. Right. Now, so far, any question class so far? This is just relationship in between your brainstem and also your fourth ventricles. This is the exactly location your fourth ventricles, right? Okay, now you know that when we talk about pons and upper half of the medulla, right, you should remember that this part of your brainstem posteriorly basically formed by floor of the fourth ventricles actually class. Okay, floor of the fourth ventricles. Okay, before extending downward to form central canal. So again, you need to remember this central canal not only you can see within the spinal cord, right? You also can see the central canal basically within your medulla oblongata. Specific lower half of the medulla. Okay, lower half of the medulla. Right. Okay, class, so far, do you have any question, class, so far? Anything else? Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, right. Okay, just introduction to your brainstem class. Okay. All right. Again, same thing. Superior view. All right. This is your midbrain. All right. Okay, absolutely. You can see this structure, and this structure we call as a pons, right? This pons. Bilateral, you have middle cerebral peduncles, right? And inferiorly, you have, this is your, yes class, this is your medulla oblongata, right? And continue downward as cervical segments of the spinal cord. Okay, now. Right, now I think focus pada UP medulla first, right? Medulla oblongata. This is your medulla oblongata. Listen carefully, right? I think I need to enlarge this diagram. Okay, the medulla oblongata. You need to imagine class over here. This is your pons, right? This is your pons superiorly, right? And inferiorly you have, this is your medulla oblongata, right? Medulla oblongata. Moving downward, and you can see this is your spinal cord. You already finished your spinal cord structure, right, class? Do you have any lecture regarding the spinal cord? Yes, class? Yes, class. Do you have any lecture regarding spinal cord?
Okay.
You already finished spinal cord, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Meaning that, so any gross anatomy for the spinal cord, I think you know, right? Because of when we learn about medulla oblongata, right? The border, especially external anatomy of medulla oblongata, basically it almost similar to spinal cord. Okay, it almost similar to the spinal cord, right? So before we go to the medulla oblongata class, right? I think you know this structure, am I right? Yes. Right. Anterior border your spinal cord actually class, right? You have groove over here, right? And this groove known as a this groove we call as a groove. Yeah. Yes, class.
Anterior median fissure.
Very good. Anterior median fissure. Anterior median fissure. This anterior median fissure of the spinal cord basically akan extend upward, which is this anterior median fissure. Also, you can see dekat you punya medulla oblongata. Understood, class? Okay. Faham. That's the reason you should know about anterior median fissure. Okay. Anterior median fissure. Because of anterior part, medulla oblongata, also you can see this anterior median fissure. Faham, class? Anterior median fissure. Right? Same thing, because this is anterior view. You should remember apa yang saya drawn. This is anterior view. Again, but you need to imagine that posteriorly, ini adalah posterior. Alright, apa ini, class? Dekat spinal cordnya. If this is anterior median fissure of the spinal cord, posteriorly?
Posterior median sulcus.
Very good. Posterior median sulcus. Meaning that posterior to the medulla oblongata, again, you have posterior median sulcus of the medulla oblongata. But somehow, because this is only anterior view, so you can see only one part, which is this is what we call as a anterior median fissure. All right. So this is anterior median fissure. You need to remember, class, right? Okay? Anterior median fissure. Right. Next. Okay. Lateral to the anterior median fissure. Again, right? If you observe your spinal cord, right, class? Okay. Simple diagram. This is anterior median fissure. Alright, before that. Alright. I make simple diagram, class, to show you, right, what is the relationship between medulla oblongata and also your spinal cord. Alright. So this is your anterior median fissure, right? Posterior median sulcus, alright? And you have another fissure over here, class. I'm not sure whether you know or not. And posteriorly, you have another fissure over here. Okay? Which is this fissure. Alright. This is your gray matter and white matter, okay? Okay, so what we learn here actually, so this is anterior median fissure, posterior, this is your spinal cord, right? This is your posterior median sulcus, meaning that anterolaterally and also posterolaterally you have another sulcus. That's why I told you before, right? I'm not sure whether you learn or you cover this structure, okay? But somehow, right? Somehow this sulcus laterally, anterolaterally, this is what we call as anterolateral sulcus of spinal cord. And also posteriorly, you have another sulcus over here. We call as yes, class? Posterolateral. Yes, I think you understand, right? Posterolateral sulcus and also anterolateral sulcus, right? This is how we divide your spinal cord white matter into column. Understood, class? Into column. Right. How many column you have your spinal cord? How many white column you have? Yes, class. How many white column you have? Just spinal cord.
3.
3. Very good. Name it.
Anterior, posterior, and lateral.
Very good. Anterior, sitting anterior, right? This is posterior. This is lateral. Am I right? Okay. This is anterior. This is posterior white column, and this is lateral white column. If I'm asking you, what is the boundary between all these columns? What is the boundary actually? Right? The boundary for each column basically in between this sulcus. Understood? Right? For example, in between anterior median fissure and also anterolateral sulcus, this column we call as anterior column. Understood? Anterior column. In between anterolateral sulcus and also posterolateral sulcus, this column we call as lateral sulcus. Sorry, lateral column. Clear, class? Lateral column. In between your posterolateral sulcus and also posterior median fissure, this is what we call as a posterior column. Okay, so meaning that this is the boundary for your column actually. This is the boundary for the column. Okay, so you have extra sulcus. Not only you know anterior median fissure and posterior median sulcus, you have two anterolateral sulcus and also you have two posterolateral sulcus. Clear, class? Right now, back to your medulla oblongata, class, right? Since you know about these sulcus, right? Anterolateral and also posterolateral sulcus, right? This anterolateral sulcus and also posterolateral sulcus for the spinal cord basically akan extend upward and form anterolateral and also posterolateral sulcus for the medulla oblongata. Beza dia adalah, kalau you tengok kat sini, anterolateral sulcus dekat spinal cord, you akan nampak from anterior view, class. Am I right? Tetapi posterolateral sulcus you only can see from posterior view, faham? Which is satu anterior, satu posterior. That's why we call as anterolateral sulcus and posterolateral sulcus. So spinal cord, kalau you nak tengok anterolateral sulcus, you can view from anterior. Alright? If you want to observe posterolateral sulcus, you akan observe from posterior view. Clear, class? Tetapi your medulla oblongata, anterolateral sulcus and also posterolateral sulcus, you can see from anterior view. Dulu you boleh nampak. Clear? Dekat mana you boleh jumpa? Dekat this region. Alright? Anteriorly, this region you can see ini adalah your, yes class, ini adalah anterolateral sulcus for the medulla oblongata, and also laterally, more lateral, you have another sulcus over here, and this sulcus we call as a, yes class, we call as a posterolateral sulcus. Clear, class? Right. Everything you can observe from anterior view, any sulcus except posterior median sulcus, which is sitting posteriorly. But the rest of the sulcus you can see, you can clearly from the anterior view, class, right? And then I think you can label everything actually, right? You can label all the structure. Alright. Okay, you can label everything, right? Okay, first the most median adalah this structure, which is this we call as yes class, this we call as you can label it class anterior median fissure. Fissure means deep groove, right? Right. Second we have, yes class, second this groove we have we call as anterolateral sulcus, and the third one, the most lateral, this we call as yes, you can name it posterolateral sulcus. Very good. Yes. Clear, class. And the most posterior, which is your posterior median sulcus. Right. That's number one. You should know. You should remember, class. Number two is, class, right? Number two is from the sulcus, class, right? From the sulcus, in between your medulla, upper border of medulla, and also this is your pons, right? In between your upper border of the medulla and also lower border of the pons, you have another sulcus sitting over here in between, right? If I draw from the lateral view, right? This is your midbrain, this is your pons, and this is your medulla oblongata, right? Okay, this is your cerebellum, right? Okay, so meaning that in between pons and also medulla oblongata, in between lower border pons and also upper border medulla oblongata, in between here also you have sulcus. Okay, also you have sulcus. Okay, in this sulcus, right, usually, okay, most of the neuroanatomy explain about this sulcus specifically known as we call as pontomedullary junctions. Okay, what is pontomedullary junction? This is referred to the sulcus actually. Sulcus in between pons, lower border of the pons, and also upper border of the medulla oblongata. Meaning that in between here, you can see pontomedullary junctions. Understood, class? Pontomedullary junctions. Clear, class, so far? So again, first we talk about the external features for the medulla oblongata, right? When we talk about external features, we talk about sulci, we talk about gyri, right? We talk about what is a fissure, right? Which is related to the pons and also related to the medulla oblongata, class. Right, next. Right, now from here, you should remember, in between, again, if you have fissure or sulcus, for example, if you have fissure, this one fissure, and this is another fissure, right, class? In between fissure and fissure, in between you have this folding area, right? And this is what we call as a, yes, class? If this is sulcus, in between you must have elevation. Am I right, class? You must have elevation, something like your brains, actually, your cerebrum. Okay? You have depression, you call it as a fissure or sulci, and in between the sulci, right, you have this folding area of the brain tissue, and this is what we call as a gyri. Am I right, class? That's why you have post-central gyri, pre-central gyri, okay? Anything. But by the way, this is the folding area of your brain, actually. And this kind of pattern also you can see at this region, meaning that if this is sulcus, and if this is sulcus, or this is a fissure, and this is a sulcus, meaning that this structure akan become elevations. Okay, they can become elevations in this area. They can start flat, actually. They are like elevations area. So this elevation area, right, sitting in between anterior median fissure and also anterolateral sulcus. So this kind of elevation, class, this kind of elevations in between anterior median fissure and also anterolateral sulcus, this is what we call as a, yes, class, we call as a P. P stand for pyramids. Okay, we call as a pyramid, right? Bilateral, left and right. You have two pyramid structure. What is pyramid? Pyramid refers to kepada elevation, right? It's a swollen area in between anterior median fissure and also anterolateral sulcus. And this structure we call as a pyramid. And this pyramid is very, very important. Don't worry, after I explain. Because this pyramid basically consists of motor fiber. Okay, it consists motor fiber, right? Number one, absolutely consists of we call as a cortico spinal tracts. I think you know something about corticospinal tract, right? Because I already explained many times, right? Even though you don't touch this topic in detail, right? Right? But somehow I explain this corticospinal tracts when I explain about the internal capsule. Okay, corticospinal tract, and also we have corticonuclear tracts plus. Right? So pyramid basically consists of corticospinal tract and also corticonuclear tract. Okay, this is what we call as a pyramid. Right? Just lateral to the pyramids. Okay, just lateral to the pyramids. What you can see here, another swollen area laterally, another swollen area. Alright, but this swollen area you can see only in upper part of the medulla. Only upper part of the medulla. You can see this swollen area. Bilateral, left and right. Okay, bilateral, left and right, in between anterior median fissure and also posterior lateral sulcus, right? So this kind of elevations, upper part of the medulla, alright, this is what we call as O. O stand for olive, class. Okay, O stand for olive. Okay, now you know you have olive actually. Okay, what is olive? Olive basically refers to the elevation or swollen area in the upper part of the medulla in between anterior median fissure and also post anterior median fissure. Sorry. In between, yes, class, in between your anterolateral sulcus and also posterolateral sulcus. Okay, so this kind of elevation in the upper part of the medulla we call as a olive, and this olive, okay, basically consists of very, very important nuclei. Actually, consists of very, very important nuclei sitting inside this olive, and this nuclei we call as inferior olivary nuclei. Okay, inferior olivary nuclei. This inferior nuclei is one of very important nuclei which is carry proprioception from the spinal cord and entering our cerebellum. Okay, so this is regarding your movements actually, right? Okay, which is that sensation, which is proprioception entering your cerebellum through inferior olivary nuclei class, right? Don't worry, after I explain in detail. Okay, for the time being, you know that just lateral to the pyramids, in between anterolateral sulcus and also posterolateral sulcus, you have another structure, swollen area in the upper part, which is we call as a olive, which is consists of inferior olivary nucleus, okay, or inferior olivary nuclei class, right? Now, okay, now we need to continue our explanations where, okay, I think I'll remain the structure class for you. Okay, I'll remove this structure. Okay, now listen carefully, class. Okay, lateral. So lateral to your olive, okay, lateral to your olive. Okay, lateral to your olive class, right? Okay, actually, you have bundle of axons. You have bundle of axons, which is moving towards your, yes, class, moving towards your cerebellum. Am I right? You have bundle of axon moving towards your cerebellum, and this kind of bundle of axon, which is moving towards your cerebellum, and this is what we call as a, yes, class. This is what we call as a inferior cerebellar peduncles, right? Inferior cerebellar peduncles, right? So up to this area, class, right? Anterior view. Do you have any question, class, so far? In the class, so far, class? Okay. You should understand in detail regarding the external anatomy of the medulla oblongata first, class, right? Because based on this external anatomy, right, it can bring you to the more understanding regarding the internal anatomy. So whatever related to the external anatomy, right, it makes you more easy when you want to learn about the internal anatomy. That's why first you need to learn about the surface anatomy for the medulla oblongata. Okay, the bulb area, the swollen area, right? What is the tract which is coming out from your medulla oblongata? And again, what is the nerve, cranial nerve, which is branch off from the medulla oblongata, right? Because when we learn about nerve after this, which is branch off from the medulla oblongata, absolutely, when we cut your medulla oblongata, you can see that nuclei, which is belong to each cranial nerve, which is moving out from your medulla oblongata. Okay, so this is external anatomy of the medulla oblongata anteriorly, class, anteriorly. Now we move posteriorly. Okay, now we move posteriorly. Right. Okay, this is posterior view. Posterior view your medulla oblongata, class. Alright. So this is your spinal cord, class. This is your spinal cord. Alright. And what you can see here, this is your, yes, class, this is your inferior cerebellar peduncles, right? Inferior cerebellar peduncles, right? Because this is the posterior view. So what you can see here, class, right? What you can see here, alright? So this is actually this structure, right? This is something like rhomboid structure over here. Rhomboid structure, which is above this your pons and this is your medulla oblongata, right? Which is in between your medulla oblongata, or specifically upper half of the medulla and also your pons actually. So this rhomboid structure, class, actually this structure, you can see this structure, right? I think you know the structure actually, class, right? Because this is the posterior view. Over here, when you observe your pons and also your medulla oblongata from this view. Dekat mana ni kelas? Apa nama structure ni kelas? Which is form your posterior surface, your medulla and also your pons. Apa nama structure ni kelas? Posterior, your medulla and also posterior, your pons actually formed by? Yes class? Formed by? Yes. Formed by?
Flow of fourth ventricle.
Very good. Floor of fourth ventricle. Understood class? Because floor of fourth ventricle basically form your pons and also your upper part of medulla oblongata class. Meaning that your medulla oblongata ni class, right? Kalau kita remove this roof, right? Kalau kita remove roof ini, ada structure macam ni. Listen carefully. If I remove this roof, okay, just focus pada you punya medulla saja. Ignore your pons actually. Kalau saya remove you punya roof for the fourth ventricles. Okay, meaning that class, your medulla oblongata ini, this medulla oblongata ada two parts actually. Number one, dia ada tertutup, closed part. Faham class? Dia ada closed part over here, which is lower half of the medulla. We call it as a closed part medulla oblongata, which is cover. It's fully covered actually, which is that's why kalau you tengok pada bahagian anterior and posterior, kalau you observe pada bahagian posterior, you cannot see this floor. Tetapi dekat bahagian upper half of the medulla, basically you can see this floor for the fourth ventricles. Dan ini kita panggil sebagai open part. Open part ini adalah closed part dan ini merupakan open part medulla oblongata posteriorly, because we can observe clearly posterior surface of the medulla oblongata, which is formed by you all punya floor for the fourth ventricles. Now by the way class, back to this diagram. Apa yang nampak di kelas? Which is this region class, ini adalah refer kepada open part medulla oblongata. Whereas the inferior region over here, this refer to the closed part because dia tertutup. Yang ini dia terbuka. Macam mana dia boleh terbuka ni kelas? Because kita dah remove you punya kita dah remove your roof for the fourth ventricles. That's why dia macam terbuka. So you akan nampak something like rhombus shaped structure class. Okay? And this rhombus shaped structure, class, alright? Okay? This is referred to you punya floor for the fourth ventricles, ataupun kita panggil sebagai rhomboid fossa. Okay, rhomboid fossa. Because of this rhomboid fossa is very important because of it consists multiple nuclei and it's very important dekat this region actually. Okay, dekat sini terletaknya structure untuk equilibrium. You have vestibular nuclei, right? You ada a lot of structures yang control. Okay, for example, you ada kita panggil sebagai area prostrema. Okay, area prostrema, okay, it's vital structure. Okay, untuk coughing. Okay, untuk coughing. Okay, so everything basically sitting inside your rhomboid fossa actually. Okay, now by the way class, so you have open part medulla oblongata. This is open part of medulla oblongata, and also you have closed part of the medulla oblongata. Alright. Now you want to see the posterior structure of the medulla oblongata. What is the structure which is you can see from posteriorly? Alright, I delete everything first. Alright, now listen carefully. Again, posteriorly at the medial part, you have this sulcus. Am I right? Posteriorly. Apa nama sulcus ni kelas? Posteriorly. This is anterior, right? Ini adalah posterior. Yes. Apa nama sulcus ni?
Posterior median sulcus.
Very good. Posterior median sulcus. Right? Because ini adalah posterior surface. This is anterior. This is posterior. So meaning that this is your posterior median sulcus, right? This is the posterior median sulcus. Again, you can label class. Posterior median sulcus. Right, next. Just lateral to the posterolateral sulcus. just lateral to the posterior sulcus. Alright, you have two elevations over here, one sitting medially and one sitting laterally, class. Again, this is very, very important structure actually, class. Which is these elevations actually, it coming from where? They're coming from this region. Ini adalah anterior, right? Ini adalah posterior, right? So meaning that ini adalah posterior median sulcus for the spinal cord. Posterior median sulcus for the spinal cord akan moving downward as a posterior median sulcus of the medulla oblongata. It's continue. Okay, it continue actually. Alright. Dan yes, class. Apa nama column ni, class? Posteriorly? This column. Can you name this column, class? Yes, yeah. Yeah. This column, this is anterior, right? This is spinal cord, right? Your spinal cord, and you should know, right? This is your anterior median fissure, and this is your posterior median sulcus, and this posterior median sulcus basically extend upward and form the posterior median sulcus for the medulla oblongata. And this column actually, class, apa nama column ni posteriorly? Dipanggil sebagai
Posterior white column.
very good, posterior white column, right? We call it as a posterior white column, right? Posterior column, right? Atau posterior white column. Meaning that this posterior column spinal cord akan extend upward posteriorly to form this region. Understood? Meaning that posterior surface of the medulla oblongata, this region which is lateral to the posterior median sulcus, this region actually adalah satu extension daripada which area? Posterior column spinal cord. Okay, posterior column spinal cord actually. Okay, and this posterior column spinal cord, okay, class again. Nak tak nak you kena tahu in detail spinal cord sekarang ni, right? I'm not sure whether you learn before, class, whether you learn before your spinal cord in detail regarding where this column will divide into two regions. This is posterior column. This posterior column, basically you can divide into two bundle of axon. One bundle of axons where it's sitting medially, right? And another bundle of axon basically sitting laterally. Bundle of axon sitting laterally, class. Okay, you know this posterior column, right? Column means consists of bundle of axon, but this bundle of axon basically consists of two parts. Number one, this bundle of axons sitting medially, and another bundle of axons in pair sitting laterally, class. Alright, have you learned before, class, this structure, class? Yes, class? Yes or no? Yes or no, class? Have you learned before? Posterior column, we can divide into two. No, right? You know this posterior column, all right? Okay, now, by the way, right now, kita akan precisekan lagi your explanations. Posterior column of the spinal cord basically composed by two different bundle of axon. Two different bundle of axon. Satu sitting medially towards your posterior median sulcus and another pair sitting laterally. Even though posterior column, you tahu itulah posterior column, but this posterior column actually you can divide into two. Because you have two bundle of axons yang berbeza. And also it carry sensation from different area of your body actually, right? That's why we have specific bundle of axon or specific tract within a posterior column or the spinal cord. So this green color, this purple color, okay, yang I draw ni, class, which is towards the middle side. So this bundle of axons actually, class, this bundle of axons, okay, medially inside your posterior column. This is what we call as fasciculus. Okay, fasciculus means bundle of axon, right? It's a rounded in shape bundle of axon. Fasciculus gracilis, right? Fasciculus gracilis. Whereas laterally, you have bundle of axon. Okay, bundle of axon sitting laterally inside your posterior column spinal cord, and this bundle of axons basically known as fasciculus cuneatus. Okay, fasciculus cuneatus. Okay, so these are the specific tract which is passing through your posterior column of spinal cord. Because of I need to introduce these two tracts, even though you will learn this tract in spinal tract soon, right, in detail, right, for the time being, right, because of you should remember about these two tracts, which is we call it as a fasciculus gracilis and also fasciculus cuneatus. Because of this fasciculus cuneatus and gracilis basically akan extend upward and form this region actually, meaning that what you can see here, meaning that medially over here, ini adalah bundle of axon which is coming from this region actually. Okay, this bundle of axon from the posterior column spinal cord akan extend upward and dia akan membentuk this region. Understood, class? Of the medulla oblongata. Bilateral actually, bilateral. Okay, whereas, this is what we call as a fasciculus gracilis, am I right? So yes, apa nama structure ni? Posterior surface of the medulla oblongata, which is near to your posterior median sulcus. This is what we call as a fasciculus gracilis, meaning that inside your spinal cord you have fasciculus gracilis, and this fasciculus gracilis extend upward as a fasciculus gracilis for the medulla oblongata. Right? It carries same sensation. It carries same tracts actually. And also laterally, you have another tract which is fasciculus cuneatus, and it's sitting laterally and it moving upward again. It moving upward as a fasciculus cuneatus for the medulla oblongata. Okay, same tract. Okay, same tract, carries same sensation from same region actually, right? Okay, so this region we call as a fasciculus cuneatus. Okay, fasciculus cuneatus. Again, when we view your medulla oblongata from posterior side, right? First, you should remember that at the midline you have posterior median sulcus. Extend laterally, you have pair of the tracts. Okay, bundle of axon which is coming from the posterior column spinal cord, and this bundle of axon we call as a fasciculus gracilis. And the last one is laterally, we have bundle of axon again coming from the lateral surface posterior column spinal cord, and this kind of bundle of axon we call as a fasciculus cuneatus. So these are the swollen area, these are the structure which is very, very prominent. You can see at the posterior surface of the medulla oblongata, more specific close part of the medulla oblongata. And the last one is this fasciculus gracilis, and also fasciculus cuneatus ini, they are moving upward and akan terminate as one area, bulb area, dekat surface, permukaan, surface. Terminate as a bulb area, which they akan terminate as a nuclei. Okay, they can terminate as a nuclei over here. Okay, okay, all right. And same thing, right? This fasciculus cuneatus, bilateral, okay, akan extend upward as a bulb area, right? It's something like it consists of group of cell body over here, class. Okay, so saya ulang semula, kelas. This fasciculus cuneatus and also fasciculus gracilis, right, akan extend upward, okay, towards the surface of the medulla oblongata, right, as a bulb area, and this is what we call as a tubercle, meaning that this is fasciculus gracilis, meaning that ini adalah gracilis tubercle, right? This is what we call as a gracilis tubercle. Okay, we call as a gracilis tubercle. Gracilis tubercle. Okay, bilateral gracilis tubercle, and also fasciculus cuneatus akan moving upward, terminate as a one rounded structure, right? It's something like bulb area, which is this we call as a cuneatus tubercle class. Okay, cuneatus tubercle. Kalau saya draw something like very, very schematic diagram, a simple diagram to show you that Macam ni. Okay. You should remember here. You should remember here. Alright. This is cell body of neuron, right? Axon, right? Nuclei over here. Cell body, axon. This is your synaptic end bulb, right? And this nuclei. Alright, maybe you should remember, class. This bundle of axon over here. This bundle of axon over here. Okay, this diagram actually. Apa yang nampak ni? This bundle of axon, the green, the purple color. This bundle of axon kita panggil sebagai, yes class, we call as a fasciculus cuneatus. Understood class? This fasciculus cuneatus, right? Okay, this fasciculus cuneatus akan extend upward because ini adalah di bahagian inferior, ini adalah di bahagian superior. Am I right? Okay, this is from your spinal cord and towards your medulla, right? This is the end of the medulla, right? Superior part of the medulla. From fasciculus cuneatus, this fiber akan terminate as one rounded area over here. This bulb area, this bulb area. And this bulb area kita panggil sebagai, yes class, this bulb area we call as a, yes, this bulb area, which is the terminal end for the fasciculus gracilis, we call as a, yes class, yes class, this bulb area we call as a,
Cuneatus tubercles.
very good, cuneatus tubercle. Okay, we call as a cuneatus tubercle, meaning that ini adalah cuneatus tubercle actually. This is cuneatus tubercle. And within this cuneatus tubercle, what you can see here, class, you have cluster of cell body actually of neuron. You have nuclei inside cuneatus tubercle. Why you have tubercle area? Tubercle is something rounded area, right? And within this tubercle, right, you have piece of gray matter. You have bundle of you have cluster of cell body of neuron, and this nuclei we call as a cuneatus nuclei. Understood, class? Cuneatus nuclei, meaning that fasciculus cuneatus terminate dekat mana? Cuneatus nuclei, dekat you punya medulla oblongata. Clear, class? I think same diagram, right? If you want to illustrate your fasciculus gracilis pun sama juga, right? Okay, you have cell body from your spinal cord, extend towards your medulla oblongata, and again this bundle of axon over here, right? Okay, within your spinal cord as well. Within your spinal cord and also within your medulla oblongata. So this bundle of axon we call as a, yes class, fasciculus gracilis. Very good. Okay, fasciculus gracilis. Okay, and this fasciculus gracilis akan terminate as a one bulb area, and this bulb area kita panggil sebagai gracilis.
Gracilis tubercle.
Very good, gracilis tubercle. And within this gracilis tubercle, absolutely, you have this kind of nuclei, class. Cell body of neuron, and this nuclei we call as a, yes class, this nuclei kita panggil sebagai,
Gracilis nuclei.
very good, gracilis nucleus or nuclei. Okay, gracilis nucleus. Okay, I think this is easy to understand actually, class, right? Because of, I think you should remember, right? I think you can create your own word, your own explanation where you can say that this fasciculus cuneatus and also fasciculus gracilis, which is coming from posterior column spinal cord, and it extends upward, okay, at the posterior surface of the medulla oblongata, again as a fasciculus cuneatus and also fasciculus gracilis, and these two tracts terminate as a rounded structure, as a bulb area we call as a cuneatus tubercle for the fasciculus cuneatus, and also gracilis tubercle for the fasciculus gracilis. And also within this tubercle, right? For example, cuneatus tubercle, you have cuneatus nuclei, where within the gracilis tubercle, or some books says gracile tubercle, we have gracilis nuclei. Okay, so you can sum up. You can say that fasciculus cuneatus terminate at the cuneatus nuclei, whereas the fasciculus gracilis terminate at the gracilis nucleus ataupun gracilis nuclei class. Right? Okay, so class. So far, any questions so far, class? Okay, I think the last structure that you should know, class, the last structure that you should know at the posterior surface of the medulla oblongata is kita akan moving laterally, class, the most lateral area over here, which is lateral to your fasciculus cuneatus. The most lateral area, class, over here, sitting over here, the most lateral area. Okay. Again, you have something like bulb area, right? Sitting lateral to the fasciculus gracilis. And this bulb area, okay, this swollen area, lateral to the fasciculus gracilis, this is what we call as tuberculum cinereum. See? Similar to your hypothalamus, right? Hypothalamus also you have tuberculum cinereum or tuber cinereum, right? Because tuber cinereum or tuberculum cinereum refer to the one swollen area, right? And this swollen area basically sitting lateral to the fasciculus gracilis, tuberculum cinereum, right? And don't worry, okay? I will touch in detail what is tuberculum cinereum. For the time being, tuberculum cinereum basically refer to bulb area, which is lateral to the fasciculus gracilis, class. Right. Okay, class. So far, do you have any questions, class, so far, regarding your medulla oblongata? Clear, class?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is more on external anatomy. I think easy for you to understand. Should be. Okay, should be easy to understand. All right, next class. Now you need to expand our knowledge lagi, class, regarding nerve, which is since we talk about external anatomy, right, of the brainstem, you should remember about not only you talk about the gyri, sulcus, right, swollen area, right. You should also explain about what is the cranial nerve, which is branched off from the medulla oblongata. This is very, very important because of when we talk about the brainstem lesion after this, right, brainstem injury after, right, we talk about the two syndrome, just very common syndrome which is related to the medulla oblongata. We call as a lateral medullary syndrome and also an anterior medullary syndrome. And this syndrome basically exactly related to the cranial nerve which is branch off from the medulla oblongata. Right now, okay, before you understand about the cranial nerve which is coming from the medulla oblongata, right, I think you should remember about every cranial nerve actually, right? Every cranial nerve from 1 until 12, right? Okay, number 1 we call as a, yes class, first cranial nerve we call as a cranial nerve, class. All right, don't worry. Okay. All right, I help you actually your cranial nerve so that you can remember, class. The first one is cranial nerve number 1, which is we call as a, yes class, number 1 we call as a olfactory nerve. Right, olfactory nerve. This is the most primitive nerve actually, right? Okay, and it's very, very developed, especially for animals. Olfactory nerve. Number 2, yes class, cranial nerve number 2. We have, yes class, very good, the optic nerve. Right. You should remember that olfactory nerve and also optic nerve, basically these two nerves, basically it doesn't arise from your brainstem. This is not nerve for your brainstem actually, except these two nerves. Okay, because these two nerves actually is straight away entering your cerebrum. Okay, but the third cranial nerve, right? Yes, from the third until the 12th cranial nerve, then you can say all these cranial nerve basically is branched off from your brainstem. The third cranial nerve will be your cranial nerve number 3, which is your, yes class, oculomotor nerve. Okay, oculomotor nerve. Number 4, cranial nerve number 4, you have trochlear nerve. Yes, trochlear nerve. Even though you still not cover this topic, right? Because the cranial nerve, I think I'm not sure. I think end of most of this topic basically is towards the end of your course. You have this cranial nerve. Now, by the way, right, you should remember about this cranial nerve. Okay, because after this you will learn about the pathway for each cranial nerve. Now, for the time being, you should remember about this cranial nerve, right, from number 1 until number 12. Number 5 plus, right, this is the biggest sensory nerve for your cranial nerve, which is this what we call as number 5, which is your trigeminal nerve. Very good, trigeminal nerve. Number 6, right, another cranial nerve which is related to your eyeball muscle, which is this what we call as very good, abducens. Okay, it abduct your eyeball, right? Abducens nerve. Number 7, yes, this is for your facial expression muscle. This nerve known as a very good, right? You love this nerve, right? Facial nerve, right? Facial nerve, right? For your facial expression muscle. Number 8, this is very, very important, especially for hearing and also for equilibrium. This is what we call as a yes class, vestibular cochlear nerve, right? Number 9, alright, this is very, very important, especially for baroreceptor, detect your blood pressure, detect chemical environment inside your blood vessels, and also it's very, very important for your deglutitions, right? And also for the taste sensation, okay? For taste sensations, okay, inside your mouth. And this number 9, right? And this nerve we call as a glossopharyngeal nerve, right? Glossopharyngeal nerve. Number 10, yes, class. This is the longest cranial nerve, actually, right? Okay. This is the vagabond nerve, actually. Vagabond, because it goes everywhere. Even though it derives from your brainstem, right? But it goes everywhere. It goes to your oral cavity, your throat. It goes into your thorax until your abdomen, class, right? Until your abdominal regions, right? So it covers the whole thing, right? Which is everything which is related to the parasympathetic nervous system. This nerve basically cover. And this nerve known as yes, vagus nerve, right? Okay, thank God we have this vagus nerve. 11, this is for the movement for your neck, right? It stimulates your sternocleidomastoid, it stimulates your trapezius muscle, right, for your neck movement. And this nerve we call as yes class, we call as very good, accessory nerve. And the last one, this is for your tongue movement, right? Number 12,
hypoglossal.
very good, hypoglossal. Hypoglossal. I think easy to understand, not understand, what I mean is easy to remember actually, right? Okay, okay. So please, right, you need to remember all these cranial nerve, right? Okay, because of when we talk about the brainstem, right? When we talk about the brainstem structure class, this cranial nerve number 3 until number 12, basically all these nerves coming from brainstem. Clear class? Everything coming from your brainstem. You should remember about the cranial nerve number 3. Right? I think this I make something easy to remember, right? You should remember that cranial nerve number 3, oculomotor nerve, and so number 4. These two cranial nerves basically derive from where? From midbrain. Understood? It derives from midbrain. Because of why we give this kind of numbering to your cranial nerve, right? Basically, this is based on position, actually. Okay, based on position. The most superior basically olfactory nerve, the most inferior basically hypoglossal nerve, actually, class, right? So cranial number 3 and 4 basically derive from midbrain. That's why when we talk about the external anatomy of the midbrain soon, we will talk about oculomotor nerve and trochlear nerve and also nuclei. Cranial nerve number 5, which is trigeminal nerve. Okay, abducens nerve, facial nerve, until vestibulocochlear nerve. Alright, this nerve basically belongs to pons. Clear class? 5, 6, 7, 8. Trigeminal nerve, abducens, facial nerve, and also vestibulocochlear nerve. Everything derived from pons. It's branched off from pons. And the last one is, right, this nerve coming from where class? Coming from the medulla oblongata, and that nerve will be your, yes class, will be your
Medulla.
yes, 9 to 12. Okay, 9 to 12. Okay, glossopharyngeal nerve, vagus nerve, accessory nerve, and also hypoglossal nerve class. Now, when we talk about medulla oblongata, right? Because this lecture basically today we talk about medulla oblongata, right? So we will talk about in detail about this nerve, okay? Where is exactly this nerve arise from your medulla oblongata, and also what is the associated nuclei? Okay, because Because each nerve basically they have something like nuclei, related nuclei. Okay. And yes, now I draw for you is the whole structure of the brainstem to show you exactly all these cranial nerve derived from your brainstem. And again, when we talk about your brainstem, right? Actually, right, you must have this kind of diagram. You should remember this diagram actually, right? Uh, sorry, class. Okay, first you need to remember about yes, your midbrain, right? Okay, your midbrain over here. Okay, inferiorly you have this is your pons, right? And also laterally extend as in middle cerebellar peduncles, right? And below you have below you have your medulla oblongata, right? And again, don't forget the sulcus, anterior median sulcus, anterolateral, and also posterolateral. Am I right, class? Anterolateral and also posterolateral sulcus. All right, now I enlarge this diagram. Okay, over here, midbrain, pons, and also medulla oblongata, class, right? And again, you need to remember that, class. You need to remember that. Okay, just above to this uh, midbrain, you have this piece of gray matter will be, this is your thalami, right? This is your thalami. All right, now listen carefully, class. First nerve that you should remember is that nerve we call as oculomotor nerve. Oculomotor nerve. Basically, right, if you observe this diagram, right, this is your midbrain, anterior and posterior. Can you see this fossa, class? This fossa. All right. You can imagine, look, this is your midbrain. All right. This region, this fossa. This is something like sulcus groove actually. This is the groove, right? Actually, right? Groove inside here, right? So this fossa, which is belong, don't worry. After this, we explain what your midbrain will touch into detail. What is the border for this fossa? This is what we call as interpeduncular fossa. Peduncular fossa. Because why I introduce you with this structure, class, right? Because of, you should remember that this interpeduncular fossa actually becomes origin for your third cranial nerve. Over here, there are one nerve coming out from this region. And this cranial nerve will be cranial nerve number 3. Understood, class? This is your oculomotor nerve, class. Okay, clear. Next, class. Next. Another nerve which is coming from where? This nerve actually coming from back, posteriorly. And this nerve moving anteriorly. The only cranial nerve which is coming from the posterior brainstem. The only. Right? And this cranial nerve will be your cranial nerve number 4, which is your trochlear nerve. Understood? Because tadi saya dah terangkan, third cranial nerve, fourth cranial nerve basically derived from where? Midbrain. So these are the roughly origin for your third and fourth cranial nerve. Next. Right, next. Now go to your pons structure. This is your pons, bilateral, left and right, your pons actually, class. And this pons actually become origin for, yes, class, number 5, number 6, number 7, and number 8. Am I right, class? 5 until 8 cranial nerve, which is derived from pons structure. The first cranial nerve that you should know is this cranial nerve are coming from where? It coming from the anterolateral surface of the pons. This cranial nerve. Okay, coming from, yes, class, it coming from anterolateral surface of the pons, and it has 3 branches actually, this nerve. One superior, one middle, and one inferiorly. Right? It has 3 branches. Nerve ini ada 3 branches. Okay, it consists upper part, it consists middle part, and it consists lower part. This nerve actually, class. And this will be your cranial nerve number 5. Apa dia, class? Cranial nerve number 5? Yes, class? Trigeminal nerve, class, right? This nerve known as a trigeminal nerve, right? Why we call it as a trigeminal nerve, right? Because of this nerve basically consists of 3 roots. 1, 2, 3. Okay, trigeminal. Okay, geminal means root, right? Tri means 3. It consists 3 root or 3 branches. The first branches of the trigeminal nerve, right, we call as ophthalmic. Okay, we call as a ophthalmic nerve or ophthalmic branch or ophthalmic division. The second branch for the trigeminal nerve, right, we call as a maxillary nerve, and the last one, the most inferior, basically we call as a, yes, class, we call as a mandibular nerve, class. Okay. Now, by the way, anterolaterals of the pons, basically this area become attachment site. This become the place where the trigeminal nerve basically branch off. Okay. All right. Next, cranial nerve. Number 5, number 6. Number 6 we call as a, yes, class, we call as a oculomotor nerve. Number 6, oculomotor nerve. Abducens nerve. Number 7, facial nerve. Number 8, vestibulocochlear nerve. Dekat mana dia derive? Listen carefully. Easy to remember actually. It derives from this region actually. 1, 2, 3. Plus 1, 2, 3. Okay. Ini the most medial ni. Apa nama kelas benda ni, kelas? Apa nama structure ni? Antara medulla and pons. Apa nama sulcus ni? Yes, class. Can you name this sulcus, class? Sulcus in between pons and also medulla oblongata. This sulcus we call as a, yes, class? Yes. Sulcus in between pons and also medulla oblongata. This sulcus we call as a, yes, class? Yeah. We call as a? Very good. Pontomedullary junctions. Pontomedullary junction, meaning that this pontomedullary junction become origin for 3 cranial nerve, which is cranial nerve number 6, cranial nerve number 7, and cranial nerve number 8. Understood, class? Straight we can remember. Okay, bilateral. Okay, bilateral. Okay, clear, class, so far? Okay, you can remember bilateral, class, over here. Okay, cranial nerve over here, cranial nerve number 6, number 7, number 8, class. Clear? Okay, it derives from the pontomedullary junctions, right? And the arrangement will be from medial to lateral, trochlear nerve, facial nerve, and also vestibulocochlear nerve, class. Right? Exactly dekat pontomedullary junction, and we can say that this cranial nerve basically belongs to pons actually. Right. Next, class. Okay, next. Next structure adalah cranial nerve number 9, 10, 11, and 12. 9, 10, 11, and 12, basically this cranial nerve belongs to medulla oblongata. Okay? It belongs to medulla oblongata, right? Now follow this arrangement. 6, 7, and 8. Okay, 6, 7, and 8. 9. Dekat mana you boleh jumpa dekat 9, class? 9 cranial nerve. 9 cranial nerve exactly you can see dekat medulla oblongata. Dekat which region? Again, listen carefully. Right. Ini adalah anteromedian fissure. This is anterolateral sulcus. Dan ini merupakan posterolateral sulcus. Am I right, class? Posterolateral sulcus. So now you can understand this posterolateral sulcus become origin for 9, 10, and also 11. Clear, class? Bilateral. 9, 10, and also 11. Cranial nerve number 9, glossopharyngeal nerve. Cranial nerve number 10, your vagus nerve, and also cranial nerve number 11. All right, and very interesting, right, class? Regarding the 11 cranial nerve, 9 apa class? Glossopharyngeal nerve, right? 10 apa? Vagus nerve. 11 apa class? 11.
Accessory.
Very good. This accessory nerve basically consists of two. Ini adalah you punya. Imagine this is your medulla oblongata, right? Below this is your spinal cord, right? Below your spinal cord. Okay, this is your spinal cord region, and above this is your medulla oblongata. This accessory nerve actually consists of two roots. First root actually coming from where? It coming from the posterolateral sulcus of the medulla. Second root, dekat mana dia berorigin? Second root, dia berorigin daripada you all punya spinal cord. Okay, second root, dia origin dekat mana kelas? Dekat spinal cord. That's why this accessory nerve, dia ada two root. Okay, first root coming from where? Coming from medulla oblongata. Dekat mana? Posterolateral surface of the medulla oblongata atau posterolateral sulcus of the medulla oblongata. That's why ini kita panggil sebagai, yes, we call as yes class, we call as dia ada cranial part. Cranial part from where? From posterolateral sulcus of the medulla, and also this accessory nerve consists of spinal part. Okay, dekat mana? Ini adalah spinal part. Okay, this is your cranial part, accessory nerve, and this is your spinal part, accessory nerve, and it joined together sebagai accessory nerve class, right? Yes, some book says nerve ini you panggil sebagai spinal accessory nerve. We call it as a spinal accessory nerve. It's not only that cranial nerve coming from your brainstem, tetapi dia juga coming from your spinal cord. Which part of spinal cord? Cervical segment of the spinal cord. Right. Okay, now by the way, right? Sekarang ni kita hanya bercakap mengenai medulla, am I right? So posterolateral surface, posterolateral sulcus of the medulla become origin for your cranial nerve number 11, specific cranial part of the accessory nerve, right? Now, the last one is class. The last one cranial nerve adalah dekat mana you boleh jumpa? Absolutely dekat bahagian, kalau ini adalah posterolateral surface, the last one you can see that nerve coming from where? Coming from here, class. Ini the last one. Bilateral. Dekat mana class? Kita dapat class? Yes, class. At which region this nerve derive? Yes, class. Bilateral, left and right. Apa nama nerve ni, class? At which region that this cranial nerve derive? Kalau this three cranial nerve ini derive from the posterolateral sulcus, then this nerve coming from where, class? Apa nama sulcus ni? Anterolateral sulcus. And this anterolateral sulcus become origin for cranial nerve yang terakhir, which is cranial nerve number 12, which is this is your hypoglossal nerve, class, right? Hypoglossal nerve. And again, when you want to explain about the external anatomy of the medulla oblongata, class, right, you can explain about this cranial nerve, right, which is related to the medulla oblongata, which is number 9, number 10, number 11, and also number 12, class. But since you have 10 cranial nerve, right, which is derived from brainstem, that's why I explained together. Okay, so I explained the whole thing, class. So you should remember about this diagram, please. You should remember about this diagram. If you talk about the midbrain, please include sekali 4th and 3rd cranial nerve. If you explain about the pons, please include 5, 6, 7, 8 cranial nerve. And if you want to explain about the medulla oblongata, you should remember about the 9, 10, 11, and also 12 cranial nerve. 9 until 11 coming from the posterolateral sulcus of the medulla, whereas the 12 cranial nerve coming from the anterolateral sulcus of the medulla oblongata, class. Okay, so far, do you have any question, class, so far? Anything, class? So,
No, sir.
clear? Class?
Yeah, yeah.
Petang ni kita ada kelas ke? Kelas? Ada kelihatan ni?
Ada sir.
Okay, petani ada, right?
Sir.
Apa dia? Ada?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. I think kita stop for a while, kelas, boleh? Petanda kita sambung ke in detail internal anatomy of the cerebrum, of the medulla oblongata, where after lunch ni kita akan try untuk view kelas. I just introduced to you, right? What you can see, this is how we learn brainstem. This is how we learn transverse sections of the brainstem actually. Okay, and in this part you can see there are 3 segments, there are 3 sections of the medulla oblongata. At 3 levels, we cut your brainstem at 3 levels. Because of every level of the medulla oblongata, we can see different structure actually. We can see different structure. Alright? Now, okay. So here, this is your brainstem actually. Your medulla oblongata over here. Okay. Alright. So this is your medulla oblongata. Okay, this diagram actually. Okay. Now, after lunch, right, saya explain dengan you all. Once we cut this medulla oblongata, we divide your medulla oblongata into 3 parts. First, we cut at the caudal end, okay, the most inferior, okay. At the caudal end, this region kita cut this region, and you can see ada 1 segment of the spinal of the medulla oblongata. Second, kita cut dekat mid segment di tengah kita cut. And last, kita cut the most superior, the most rostral part. So kita 3 part. Okay, kita cut at this level, superior part, ataupun the most rostral part, at the middle part, and also the most caudal part, inferior part. 3 part, meaning that kita akan ada 3 view you punya medulla oblongata. 1 view, and this view. Okay, and this view will be this diagram actually. Right? The first view here adalah bila kita cut dekat di bahagian inferior, the most inferior, this view. Where this view kita panggil sebagai, this section adalah dekat bahagian mana kita panggil sebagai at the pyramid decussation. Don't worry, I'll explain detail after this petang ni. This segment basically at the level of pyramid decussations. Alright, this is related to the motor decussation. Decussation means this fiber cross each other, right? It cross from left to right, right to left. So we call it as a decussation, pyramid decussation. Second, over here, this segment of your medulla oblongata, when we cut at the, kita panggil sebagai sensory decussations. This is motor decussations. Motor decussations. Can you see this fiberglass? It cross each other, right? It cross each other. That's why this is what we call as a pyramid decussations. Now, by the way, second decussation basically happen at the mid plane actually, middle plane. Okay, where you can see this is what we call it as a sensory decussation level, at the level of sensory decussation. And this sensory decussation, we can see this fiberglass. So kita touch into detail. Okay, sensory decussations. And the third segment of your medulla oblongata, the most rostral part, you can see over here. This segment basically when we cut dekat mana kelas? Kita cut dekat bahagian olivary nuclei. Ingat lagi tadi olivary nuclei? Because as you know, olivary nuclei dekat bahagian mana? Dekat bahagian inferior, middle or superior kelas. Olivary nuclei, you can see. Olive. Still remember olive kelas? Olive. Dekat mana olive kelas? Yes, I think you know, right? Dekat mana olive you can see posterior surface, am I right? Sorry, anterior surface. Anterior surface dekat which region? Upper part of the medulla, right? Dekat this region, you can see. Ini, olive. Ni. Ini adalah you call as a pyramids, right? Dan ini you can call as a olive, right? So this olive adalah dekat bahagian upper part of the medulla oblongata, anterior surface. So kita cut dekat this region. Okay? Kita cut dekat this olive region, okay? So that's why you can see this diagram. Okay? So the third will be the level at the level of olive. Okay? At the level of olive. Okay, first at the level of pyramid decussation, second at the level of sensory decussation, and the third one at the level of olive. We cut the olive and we can see what is the structures within this medulla oblongata. That's how when we cut dekat bahagian olive, right? straight away you know ini adalah dekat bahagian olive. Why you know this dekat bahagian olive? Can you see this nuclei class? Very prominent nuclei anteriorly. This nuclei kita panggil sebagai inferior olivary nuclei yang saya bagi tadi, right? Saya beritahu dekat you all. Saya beritahu dekat olive you have very important nuclei. It's a motor nuclei. Receive sensation berkaitan dengan proprioception and bring all that information back to your cerebellum. And this nuclei we call as an inferior olivary nuclei class. Okay, inferior olivary nuclei. Now, by the way, these are the segment of the medulla oblongata at the level of olive. So we'll touch structures within all these segment class, right? And I try to visualizekan untuk you all apa structure yang penting that you should know actually class. Yang very prominent and ada clinical importance, right? Because ada certain structure tu yang not so important to understand, okay? Tetapi ada certain very important, especially kita perlu bercakap mengenai cranial nerve nuclei and also what is the tract passing through your medulla oblongata, and also where is the exactly location for each tract actually class. Okay, so far do you have any question class so far? Anything?